sir.
John, this is our first broadcast during the new administration. How you doing?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm really deeply troubled by the concept of Joe Biden being president. I'm really troubled by what went on at the Capitol on the 6th. I'm troubled by this second impeachment of Donald Trump. The decidedly socialist, anarchist direction that our country is taking. I'm convinced that we are no longer a constitutional republic, but rather a technocratic socialist autocracy that we have no rights.
Wow. And
But other than that, I'm well.
Other than that, well, certainly one of the reasons that I moved overseas was to take a look at how other people live and to see how little it takes to be happy. Right. And when you go to places like Burma and Cambodia and Malaysia, parts of Malaysia, what have you, outside Kuala Lumpur, you see people that have very, very, very little.
Right.
And they're singing and dancing and laughing their asses off. And it gives you a different perspective. And so as bad as things are, imagine what it was like when the founding fathers found out, or forget the founding fathers. Imagine what it was like when Paul Revere comes riding through your neighborhood in Connecticut, long before Dick Blumenthal, and says the British Navy is on its way to kill you.
Yeah. No, it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, so by comparison, we'll get through it. As a nation.
I know we'll get through, but I'm troubled by it, and I'm concerned at what is on the other end.
So here's the thing. This has been a sequence of insidious events that I think has reached a certain culmination that has some people sort of in disbelief of what they're seeing, right?
Yeah, shock. I think I'm still in shock.
I think you are too. I think a lot of us are. Yeah. So, first of all, again, I think I said something about this a week or so ago. Say what you will about Alan Dershowitz, but he sure does, call him on both sides of the street. So he said, how the hell are you supposed to impeach somebody who's not a president? This guy's not the president anymore. You can't impeach somebody who's not the president. He's a private citizen. So that being the case, this should be game, set, and match. And from a pure healing and unity perspective,
no, they're going to push forward with it. And Alan Dershowitz is an absolute douchebag. I hope he hears me say that. He lies so frequently, and the things that he says just can't be believed or listened to. He's a political animal who is saying and doing things to gain favor for whoever it is that he represents. My personal opinion, I don't have facts to support this, but I think he at very least represents interests in Israel if he's not a full-up operative of Israeli government, military, Mossad, whatever. So to the extent that he's he's a criminal defense attorney. So if he's retained to defend Donald Trump, he will. I personally think, at least what I've learned about the law, it's not like working on a car engine or a computer. One of the things I find satisfying about solving computer problems, they're binary. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. And until you find the solution, the thing won't work. The law is not like that. The law is a bit more like a poem or a painting. I mean, obviously you need a brush to dip into paint to smear on a piece of something for it to be a painting, but there's no rules. You can do whatever, and if you come up with a painting that people like, you've got a painting. Same thing with the law. I'm saying
It's subject
Dersh
to
will go in there
interpretation.
and
You're
say
saying
you
the law
cannot.
is
It,
subject to interpretation.
Absolutely. And Dersh will go
Right.
in there and say, well, you can't impeach somebody who's not the president. But yet, if you were to encounter Donald Trump on the street today, or even 20 years from now, if he's hopefully still alive, you would address him as Mr. President. So the fact that he was president may mean that he could be impeached for things done during the time he was the president. We'll have to see. I'm sure that's what the Democrats are going to argue, and I'm sure it's going to be a crooked, unsatisfying, kangaroo court type operation. And there's a ton of things that you can't do by the law, but they do it all the time.
Joy. And that's why again I want to compliment the art department on the thumbnail for tonight, because
thank you.
That's really the theme for tonight's show. I don't know if you mind if I cue it up. Is that okay if I cue it up? Will you pull up the thumbnail? I want to show everybody the thumbnail for the.
I'm showing it from the switcher so everybody can see it, but you can't.
All right. I got a little gift for everybody. If you guys remember this, I'm just going to play 6 seconds.
Don't monetize. No, don't. It's just going to.
I can play 2 seconds. 2 seconds is allowed.
The beat goes on.
That's it.
There we go.
That's all we're allowed. So the net of this is, the research that we've been doing, quite frankly, doesn't have a political party associated with the research, right? So we're talking about viruses, we're talking about comorbidities, we're talking about global pandemics. I don't think the virus knows whether the people it's infecting are Republicans or independents or Democrats, or it certainly seems to know whether they're Laotian, because nobody in Laos has it. But it doesn't seem to be able to distinguish between Democrats and Republicans. And so the research carries on. And so the beat goes on. And it's a double entendre because, when you do journalism, it's a beat, right? And so this is the beat that we write. And so the beat goes on, whether he's in the White House or whether his vice president is in the White House 90 days from now for whatever reason.
Canadian, you mean? Kamala Harris?
Well, again, the beat goes on. And so, we could have had Hillary as president for the past 4 years. That would have been that would have been like living in South Park. That would have been that would have just been like, what's going on? So the net of it is, the facts are the facts, the data is the data, and to me, sort of, I don't know what's higher. Is there an award that's considered more prestigious than the Emmy Award? Do you think
I think I actually just flushed something down the toilet that was more prestigious than an Emmy Award.
There you go. So imagine if there was really like a pretty serious award here. Quite frankly, say what you will, and I know we all have had our issues with him, including me, including you, but you never fell for this PSYOP thing. And,
you heard about the 17th letter of the alphabet?
Yeah. And our friend who runs Banned Video, who can't seem to keep his hand out of the cookie jar.
I'm still trying to get back on there. Let's just be careful.
That's why I'm being gentle. That's why I'm being gentle, right? In fact, I'm going to probably post my videos up there also. But the net of it is, you guys both nailed it and said, this is, and I kept saying, how do I know this isn't a 14-year-old kid just that knows his Bible verses and stuff and is just a little hacker, some little, imagine what Julian Assange was like when he was 14. Imagine these little hackers when they're 14 years old, just making up stuff. How do I know that's not what this is? And that's why I didn't give it a whole lot of credence. I kind of glanced at it. I think I did 1 or 2 videos on it. And there was only one post that I told you got my attention, which was the one that mentioned Las Vegas. And that was right around the time that the original John Cullen channel got pulled, right around the time the house was broken into. All that stuff was happening at the same exact time. So Q came out, my original channel was pulled, my house was broken into, and that all happened within a series of 72 hours.
Yeah. And I mean, lots of people who have been dogging me for the past 4 years seem to be all right there. The moment this Q thing hit, we got to be careful even saying that letter, the 17th letter of the alphabet. The moment
We're
that
allowed to
hit,
debunk. We're allowed to debunk, and we are
we're
debunking. You're the
debunking
one
it.
who
It's
said that. Yeah,
stupid.
you were the
It
one.
was,
You were the
yeah,
one. You kept
yeah,
saying this is nonsense. I'm not going down this road.
yeah,
And Alex
yeah.
said it's a tar baby, and that's how I know
Mm.
Alex keeps watching because I'm the one who's using the term tar baby, and Alex is calling it a tar baby, right? So
Well, we should
we
also
all
mention
agree.
that
We
you've
all agree.
been struck and are
Yeah.
unable to upload. There's no live stream today on the Johnny Hoover channel due to malicious strikes.
Thank you for talking me down from the palm tree. Uh, I was out on the ledge. I was so angry, man. And you were like, dude, this happens to me every 4 weeks. And you calmed me down. So thank you.
Hmm.
But
Now,
yeah,
people
the
are,
channel got struck because I posted a video and I said that my paper was better than the CDC's paper. And I'm not allowed to say that. And I felt that my paper was better because it was bigger and because I cited more countries and because I incorporated their entire paper. Right? And I cited everybody. So it's not plagiarism if you cite them, right? So if you cite everybody and you incorporate everything they wrote, and then I just start adding more maps, I thought, for example, more usually is better when you're sampling in statistics. For example, if we were doing a clinical trial of a vaccine, you would want a clinical trial with 10,000 people more than just 10 people. More is better, right? So when I'm sampling nations and putting together a white paper, I'm sampling more. And so I felt that was better. And me feeling that my paper is better is why people publish papers. That's what science is. You don't publish your paper because you think you're wrong or because you think this is
unless you're
lousy.
Fauci.
Well, that's, he may think he's right about these things. So I don't know what the hell he's thinking because his wife is the ethics lead. So he must be on the right track, right? So the net of this is I'm looking at this from a perspective of data. I don't really care at the moment who's in the White House because I don't want to kick that pot right now. I think when tensions calm down, we have some fascinating data to explore around the dominance that Joe Biden showed at the ballot box. Pure, unadulterated numerical dominance like I've never seen. Stronger than Hillary Clinton. And if that isn't a referendum, by golly, I don't know what is. But now's not the time to talk about that. Now's the time to unite. Now's the time to bridge, right? Like Joe Biden was saying that Ted Cruz was like Joseph Goebbels, right? So from a unity and bridging perspective, I want to talk about data because the data hasn't changed. Fauci's still there. And Fauci is now back with the WHO. So now
And Biden put us back into the WHO.
So the question to the WHO is, and we're going to look at this tonight when you pull up the deck, I'll show you, did the WHO stop tracking Ebola? Did the WHO stop tracking tuberculosis? Did the WHO stop tracking malaria? What else has the WHO just completely abandoned as a result of coronavirus? And is that a reasonable question to ask?
Logic
Were you
and
not?
reason.
Well, are you? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, why would you not be allowed to ask that question? Is it that only Sean Hannity is allowed to ask that question, or only Tucker Carlson? I'm not allowed to ask that question.
There,
One of the things that blew me away, and I quite frankly, I was watching you in Washington D.C. walking around the other day, and the fact that they had a First Amendment area, I couldn't believe you kept your cool.
There's
upon
like a
being told.
million army guys wanting to shoot
Well,
me.
yeah, exactly, yeah, with heavy stuff. But the net of this notion.
And the rifle plates for the body armor were sold out, so I was not feeling that lucky.
So I don't know if when you arrived, you realized that you had already given up your rights where you were. And then in order to exercise your First Amendment rights, you were going to have to go stand in a fenced-in area.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable. And so, if we had Mr. Cullen's neighborhood, if we had that graphic back up, I would, this week's word would be insidious. Because this is what happens when you don't take action quick and early. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. This guy was fascinating, by the way. And again, I want to applaud you. Can I applaud you for a minute? Is it okay if I put you on a pedestal? Sure. You did this interview with this guy. I think he was half Egyptian and half Thai.
Yeah.
And your patience with him, despite the fact that he's not a very good communicator.
Right.
And you were really patient, and you were really trying to let him express his frustrations and his voice and say what he was trying to say. And he's not really good at getting it out. And I was watching people in the comments section, and people were commenting, but you were so patient, and you were kind and open-minded, and you let the guy get comfortable enough that he just kept going and going and going. Right. The fact that he wasn't really communicating well is different from him not having these thoughts and these feelings, right? He just doesn't express them that easily or that well. But you were very patient with him. And I think that's one of these qualities that you bring to the streets when you meet people. And the genius of wearing the Biden hat to set the bias.
Right.
You flipped the bias script and you used bias to your advantage. You used bias to get a much more reasonable reaction and realistic reaction from people. And to me, that's okay. It's like, that's not really deceptive. You just kind of went up to people and still asked them the same kind of questions you normally would.
Mm-hmm.
But their
to be completely honest, the reason I did it was, yes, in part what you're saying, but just saying that sounds somewhat deceptive. The reason I did it was because I didn't want to be recognized on the street and attacked. I did it for really my own personal security, to blend in with the crowd, and I had hoped that with the mask, I meant to bring sunglasses, but forgot them. And my hope was that people just wouldn't know that it was Jason Goodman, because a lot of Antifa have photographed me, and we know how they love to isolate and attack journalists. So I did that out of pure protection. But you're right. And even that guy, that Egyptian Thai guy, said, you and I, we both know what we stand for. And I said to myself, that's ironic because you don't know what I stand for.
Right. But what was interesting was you used a method that's very similar to what I've seen Leslie Stahl use in the past. Now, Leslie Stahl has she's kind of shown her cards now, and now we know where she stands politically, which was a mistake. But she has a technique when she interviews people where she is so sweet and she is so kind and asks all kinds of sweet little buttery questions about puppies and kittens and stuff, and then hits you with the fastball towards the end of the interview. And she's done this a number of times, and I kind of felt like I was watching that same sort of thing where, because of the bias, everybody's sort of assuming certain things from your perspective, and then you're asking them about, okay, so give me some specifics and tell me some stuff, and they're like, well, you're not supposed to ask me for those things. You're not supposed to ask me for specifics. And they were almost like taken aback, like, we are on the same side, right? But yeah, I don't actually know anything.
Well, one of the funny, unexpected side effects, John, I don't know if you noticed this, but by the end of the day, I started to feel like most of the people I was speaking to did not support Joe Biden, and the hat actually had kind of the reverse effect by making people a little bit kind of trepidatious about speaking to me. I spoke with that guy Baxter, who, initially when he approached me, I was a little bit concerned that this might be somebody who's recognizing me and vetting me out for wearing the hat.
Yeah.
And I think I might have,
Yeah. But it was interesting. It's interesting to see how just by wearing the hat, the biases change completely. It's wild, right? And you put on a hat with some horns and some fur,
Right.
and you're on the
And the
cover of
face
every
paint.
paper,
And now
and that's
today
it.
that guy's announced that he is renouncing
Well,
Trump. The Grand Poobah Water Buffalo Lodge Q shaman
dude,
guy has announced that
fabulous.
he's renouncing Trump. Lawfare kingpin Lawrence Tribe,
Yeah.
he has come out with a tweet saying, oh, look, see, Trump's people are turning against him. But this is one of the oldest tactics that they have. They send a double agent posing as a friend, agitates some outcome. This happened in my case with Susan Holmes, with George Webb. Then that person becomes an adversary, and the public is like, oh my God, these people that used to be close to Trump, these people that used to be close to Jason have turned against him. That was their whole purpose of being there in the first place, to turn against.
You've been nailing it and nailing it and nailing it again and again and again. And with this whole PSYOP thing, you nailed it. And I think you might be right about who was asked to make a personal sacrifice for 4 years in order to, yeah, I'm afraid you were right.
I think so.
Yeah. And also, this whole love triangle disaster thing that happened with Alex and David Knight and Steve Pizzenik. And Steve Pizzenik goes on Alex's show and says, wait, this is going to happen. And we got the watermarks. And Alex is calling BS on the Q thing. And Pizzenik's like, no. We got this. You were calling BS on it. David Knight calls BS on it and they fire him over it. And then it turns out
he was right.
He was right. Right. So David Knight was right. Alex, for whatever, I'm hoping Alex is realizing he made a mistake there in a big way, because David Knight was right. And, where's Steve Pizzenik right now? Is he saying, no, Biden's not actually the president? I don't want to hear this nonsense. So anyway, can we show the folks just a couple quick bluff things before we go Patreon only? Because my channel's down. And I want, so if anybody who's just meeting me for the first time and doesn't understand why I'm wearing a hat and sunglasses, it's because John Kiriakou didn't get a pardon.
I got a lot to tell you about him as well. I don't believe anything that guy says.
Okay. Well, the net of it is I see people who keep getting arrested and keep getting in all kinds of trouble when they use their real names. And I've got kids and they don't need this aggravation. So if I can delay it a little bit, that's what I'm going to try and do. Seth Rich is dead. Phil Haney's dead. And that's that. So 33 years ago, I'm the guy who helped put together this mapping system that Johns Hopkins is using. Today, it tells us that there's over 8,000 people dead in Tennessee. I thought you'd get excited when you saw the 33 years. So it's the new year. So, so now it's exciting. But the net of this is that Tennessee in the United States has 8,684 people dead right now. And that's right there. It's on that black box down there. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see some specifics. A couple other bottom line upfront things. We talked about Gina Haspel has resigned. I will say this. I think the only reason I'm still alive is because she shook her head one day.
She's up to something. It's strange to me that she resigned the day that Trump leaves. I mean, why do that?
I don't know, but you know how short a flight it was from Bangkok to where I was. It was less than an hour. They could have had me in no time. All she had to do was say, go get him. And before lunch, I'd have been in a van. And she ran the black sites in Thailand.
Yeah.
And she ran the embassy, So I think the only reason I'm here is due to her grace. So
maybe her ineptitude.
No. I think she said no.
We gotta pretty quickly here get over to our sponsor exclusive segment, John, and people are going to enjoy that on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. John, YouTube channel is just like case in point. I think people realize that we're being scrubbed from the internet. You know, for all these years, everybody who has been saying, oh, why don't you just put all this stuff on YouTube or wherever? We see now why. I anticipated this. When I started doing Crowdsource the Truth, I saw everybody who's been around for 5-10 years before me saying their videos were getting demonetized, and I sought to create this alternative method. I've created a lot of startup companies in my career and hired people and everything. So I've created this really effective, decentralized news network, essentially, where the viewers decide which co-hosts they want to enjoy by going to subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen or patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. And I couldn't do this without the sponsorship and support of our really, truly generous viewer sponsors. So I want to thank everybody who's sponsoring the show. And we'll see everybody in just a few minutes on Patreon and Subscribestar, where we're going to go in depth on all of this stuff. Thanks for watching, everybody.